Good morning to you. It is Monday morning. It is 8 o'clock on the dot, and it is chilly outside. Like, chilly outside. I'm first warning meteorologist Eric Burris. This is Coffee Talk. We get together 7 days a week to chat about what's going on in the world of weather. If you didn't join us over the weekend, that's okay. We started this thing back up. If not, thanks for hanging with me while I was doing the spring break thing. We're back at it, though, baby, and holy cannoli, Mother Nature's like, oh, it's time for winter to end? Nah, I'm not on board with that. Yeah, what we're experiencing right now seemingly is Mother Nature's last opportunity to throw the cold weather. It is winter's last stand, for lack of a better term. We'll be chatting about that. And then, of course, if you're on spring break or if you're just a fan of the warmer weather, we'll be discussing when beach weather returns to the area. It is a lovely, lovely start of the day, and we'll get you covered in all of those facets. But first, let's look outside live, see what's doing on our Tower Cam network. There is a beautiful shot. New Smyrna Beach Tower Cam. We're looking right over toward New Smyrna Beach. Looks like it's high-ish tide. So you don't see Disappearing Island because it has disappeared. First warning, live Doppler radar, rain-free. Did have some rains move through overnight, but what we have now is a chilly start. It's cold outside, people. Here's a look right now. 50 degrees in Orlando, which is nice and cool, but look up to the north. It's 46 in Leesburg, 43 degrees in the Villages, 39 degrees for us in Ocala. Yeah, that's a chilly one. So where do we go from here? All right, so we've got more and more sun. Yesterday was a cloudy day. We did get a little bit of sunshine in the afternoon, but look at this. It's gorgeous. 57 degrees, 11 o'clock, 62 by 1 o'clock, 68 degrees, our high temperature. So it does look to be just a smidge warmer than where we were yesterday. 5-7 degrees warmer than yesterday. It's going to be a lovely day. And then for tonight, cool, but not as cold. The trend from here on out is going up and up and up and up and up. So that's not too bad. And with that, I say pause and good morning to you. Pat, Kimberly, Frank, good morning to you. Paul, how are you? Tina, good morning to you. Oh, excuse me. I need to grab... excuse me. I need to grab my coffee. I haven't had a sip of it. I made it a few hours ago, but the little mug keeps it warm, so. Yep, there it is. Excuse me. Juan Carlos, good morning to you. Beth, good morning. How are you? Jamie, good morning. John, how are you? Beverly, good morning to you. Beverly. David, good morning. Nancy, how are you? Frank says... beautiful. It is indeed beautiful. Nate Story says, happy spring. Yeah, it's not officially there yet. So, this whole thing makes perfect sense, right? Mother Nature's like, all right, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go winter right up until the last possible second. Yeah, today's the first day of spring, but it hasn't started yet. If you want to get technical, the vernal equinox begins at 5:24 p.m. tonight, this afternoon, this evening, this night, whatever you want to call it. That's where it is. So we're there, but we're not there yet, right? All right? We will be there. By Friday, we'll go from 10 degrees below average today to 10 degrees above average by Friday. So those temperatures are starting a climb, little bit by little bit by little bit. And the reality is today we're still below average, but it's the last bit of it, right? So high temperatures today in the left column, Orlando, Sanford, Leeds, you see, we're in the 60s, right? On the right column, those are our average high temperatures. About 10 degree difference or so, give or take. So we're on our way in the right direction. Yeah. But if you're looking for things to do, people, for what it's worth, This is a theme park day of theme park days. Universal Studios, nice light breeze, temperatures climbing. If you're heading over to Hollywood Studios, oh, is that a gorgeous, cool afternoon. Temperatures below average, bright sunshine. If you're going to play a little bit of golf, the good news is the winds are calming a bit. I mean, it was gusty yesterday. It's still going to be breezy, but we're looking pretty okay. All right, so that's where we're at. All right, so making plans for the day ahead, all I would say is long sleeves, that whole thing. All right, so that's where we're at. That's our what to wear forecast. I know it's 8 o'clock, so the kids are already out the door, but like, how you doing? I know for some of you that did not join on the weekend, I haven't talked to you in a couple days. Had a nice spring break here. I hope you had a really great couple of days. Yeah. Kenneth said the vernal equinox really began when Jim Varney knocked on Vern's door saying, "Hey, Vern, these are the dad jokes. Happy Monday." Thank you, Kenneth. What's so sad to me is that there's a whole generation of people won't get that reference. Won't understand that Santa Claus visited the Orlando Science Center and that Ernest did save Christmas. I feel like my generation is probably the last that will get that, unless us parents teach the kids about Ernest and the importance of being earnest. Get the reference? You literary folks should. That was a dad joke too. There was a book called that had nothing to do with Ern anyway. Nobody said I was funny. All right, today, there's a look at the forecast. It's gorgeous. I will say, though, if you're along the coast, it's going to be a cooler day, right? 62 today in Daytona Beach, 68 today in Orlando, 66 in Ocala. I'm going to have to set my alarm. It's now hard to make coffee talk during time change. Annie, I get it. Listen, I went out. This morning was the first. So, I mean, I worked the weekend morning shows, right? But this morning was the first morning that I woke up and got like the kids ready for school in the time change world. And I walked out and I was like, oh, it's dark. It's 7 o'clock now. Like, it's very funny. Love them both. Thank you, Susie, for getting that. Thank you. Makes me feel not so bad. Thank you. Always great to have your forecast for special occasions. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And no need for a special occasion. We're doing pretty okay, you ask me. We do have a special occasion for those of us space nerds coming up. I mean, we've done this a couple times before, but you know me. I love to talk about space, okay? And we do have the next attempt at the Terran 1, the 3D printed rocket from Relativity. They've given it a couple of goes. Hopefully we'll be doing better this time. Would love to see a launch. 10 p.m. to 1 a.m. launch window. I'm going to try to stay awake for this one. I mean, you can tell I'm a rocket nerd. I've got rockets behind me. And it's not just like, I don't just have one picture behind my head. Like there's a whole wall of pictures. And it's like Central Florida, like attractions, weather, rockets. I've got like weather, space, all the things that are me. There's 12 pictures. Anyway, you get the idea. You get the idea. So we'll be watching to hopefully see a really neat first attempt at this. The mission's called Good Luck, Have Fun. 90% chance of good weather for that one. So hopefully we'll be able to see that. That'll be a lot of fun. The temperatures, though, will be climbing mid to late week. If you're like me, like for me at this point, I'm ready for the heat. And I know that sounds silly. And I know that I'll be regretting that at some point. But I'm ready for summer. I said it. And by the end of the week, at least our temperatures are going to be getting there. Nowhere near records. The records are already in the mid-90s. But we'll be getting to about 90 degrees by Saturday. So that's kind of where we're at. All right. Yeah. Amanda, is the sound on for anyone else? I hope so. Looks good on my end. Looks good on my end. Amanda says, me too. Be careful what we wish for, though, right? Oh, it's true. It's true. Listen, we already issued, it's kind of interesting. We already issued the hurricane forecast, right? And for what it's worth, La Nina has gone away. We are now neutral. And frankly, are starting to look more and more like an El Nino year. But what's kind of interesting, if I may, if you and I don't want to do this making you think I'm hyping anything, but for what it's worth, kind of an interesting little phenomenon, even though El Nino is seemingly, we're phasing over to an El Nino year. The water temperatures, particularly in the Gulf of Mexico, well above average. Okay? And even in the main development region, the Atlantic Basin, the water temperatures are above average. Now, with El Nino, that's only one piece of the puzzle, right? But, at the end of the day, it'll be interesting just to see how things all play out, right? And of course, if you're interested in our hurricane season forecast, it is always available. wesh.com/hurricane forecast. All right? No hyping. I'm not hyping. I'm just telling you, what I'm seeing. And I always want to be very forthcoming with you. All right, so let's take a look. Central Florida's certified most accurate 7-day forecast. Upper 60s today for spring, below average. But the first full day of spring, we're right at average. Tomorrow, 77's the high temperature forecast. Normal high 79. So we're right there. Then above average Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And look at the weekend forecast. A couple of showers is what we're looking at now. And high temperatures around 90 degrees. Yeah. Chrissy's asking, is there any rain forecast through Friday? We're looking pretty dry. We're looking pretty beautifully dry. Yeah, we're looking pretty good. Beverly says it's downright chilly. Good morning to all. Beverly, good morning to you. It's good on Facebook, Beverly says. Yeah, the audio is fine. Adam says temperatures are looking good over on YouTube. Beverly says we don't need a hot ocean. What's so funny, though? I mentioned this on TV on Saturday. Before I went away on spring break, water temperature at the beaches were in the low to mid 80s. And at this point, they really have adjusted in the wrong direction. Look at the water temperatures now. 64 to 66. 64 to 66. What? Yeah. The water temperatures have adjusted quite a bit. They went down. I mean, they'll come back up. This kind of ebb and flow thing happens. Upwelling, etc., etc., etc. But yeah, that's where we're at. And no, Maggie's asking, it says 90. Typo? No. And as a matter of fact, we've already had 4 days of 90-degree heat in Orlando. So that's not the craziest thing in the world. Yeah. We only got a few sprinkles and a quick shower on Saturday, Terry states. Yeah. Listen, we weren't expecting a ton of rainfall. As a matter of fact, one of the storylines of this whole forecast is that, yeah, we had some showers, but it really wasn't anything to our drought conditions, right? We're in a moderate drought at this point for all of Central Florida. And when we look at our rainfall deficits, we're 3-4 inches behind. So we need 3 or 4 inches to bust the drought, and you don't see that happening. So there you go. Yeah. Tina says down 20 pounds, 3 weeks post-op Mazel Tov. Tina, congratulations. What a loser. In the best way possible. I love it. Jen, it's 54 degrees in Port St. Lucie, and I have a horrible internet connection here, but I persevere. Well, good morning to you, Jan. Oh, Port St. Lucie. We were just down there during spring break. Had a great time. Love it. Spring in Florida, always unpredictable. Terry, I mean, the reality though is that it's not just Florida. It's really all across. You know, if we look at the current temperatures around the United States, I mean, it's 26 degrees in Minneapolis right now. It's 31 degrees in Boston, you know. Now, if we look at the temperatures, give me a minute. Here's the low temperatures for today, okay, around the country. Has to go get the data. All right, that's chilly, 27 in Boston. If we look at Tuesday, though, for what it's worth, 35 in Boston, 36 in Chicago. If we look at Wednesday, right, you're 41 in Chicago. If we look at Thursday, you see the idea, right? You see where I'm going with this. Not just us, but everybody is starting to trend warmer. Now, there is a cold front here. It's going to drop temperatures again, but like 43 to wake up Thursday morning in Boston, 50 in Washington, 46 in Chicago. So you get the idea. Those temperatures kind of piece by piece by piece by piece are starting to go on up. Little bit by little bit. So, yeah, that's not too bad. Does the seaweed blob affect the waters, making it warmer? I have to study that. You know, it's one of those things. I would think the opposite. The seaweed would not allow the sunlight to get down, thus it would cool it. I have to look, though. Tiffany, I know what I know, and I know what I don't know, and I have no problems going and researching what I don't know. So there's that. Maggie, I met you when we... Oh, yeah, that's you. Hi, Maggie. Yes. Going to see Phil. By the way, you talk about Phil Rosenthal. We were at Disney Springs last week, and did we go have some of that wonderful gelato? We did. Did you? Yep. Good morning to you, David. David says, I love the coolness. I know you're referring to the temperatures because nobody said I was cool. Be the sunshine in listening mode. Very good, Marie. Very good, very good. My brother lives in Jackie, you have to type something. I have to figure out how to say Madawaska, Maine. If it's as cold as it is hard to say, then I would imagine, yeah. We're going up to Maine this summer for a wedding. At least it's during the summer. Julie says 90 on Saturday. Mind blown. I know. John, will you be able to work on the April forecast this week? I'll probably get it done today. Yeah, it's definitely not been anywhere near a priority, but I know we're getting close, so I guess I need to do it at some point. Yeah, I'll probably be able to get it done today. So that's good. Oh, Debbie, you're a putz. Any questions, comments, concerns? Listen, if you were with us this weekend, you heard. If not, I'm here to tell you, we have a very special guest on the Coffee Talk drive-thru this week. We're going to be talking to former WESH chief meteorologist Dave Marsh on Friday. That's going to be a really, really fun coffee talk. For those of you that are youngins, you may not remember Dave. For those of you that moved here recently, you may not remember Dave. Dave was the chief meteorologist at WESH prior to Tony Manalfi. WESH has not had a lot of chiefs. You know, some TV stations, contract, new chief, contract, new chief, contract, new chief, contract, new chief. But I think that says a lot about the management at our television station, the management of the company we work for. We are a television station owned by Hearst Corporation. Certainly, I mean, I've been with the company 17 years. You know, so you can tell I've got a feeling about the way that the company is treated. So, but you know, I think that it's a statement about the company as a whole. And so, I mean, I grew up watching Dave Marsh. He's one of the oldies but goodies, so to speak. And you know what's really neat is in a day when meteorologist was not the thing. You know, if you rewind a bit, story time. and maybe some of you don't even realize this, but years and years and years ago, it wasn't a meteorologist necessarily who did the weather on the news. It was like there was hardly even morning news back in the day. It was the evening news. The evening news with John O'Connor and Wendy Chioji and Chief Meteorologist Dave Marsh. There was a good chunk of time in Orlando, and I certainly plan on talking about this with Dave, but there was a good chunk of time when Dave Marsh was the only meteorologist on TV in Central Florida news, right? Because you had Danny over at 9, you had Pamela Brady over at 6, and I don't believe that I know Danny wasn't, and I don't think that Pamela was either. So it was like, and not to say that, listen, I mean, I grew up watching them as well, but like Dave had training that nobody else had. And so I'm really interested to chat with Dave about how was that? Did the station want you to be a little more sciencey because you could be, because you had that background, that knowledge? Because like in today's world, and I've always said that I'll be honest with you, 100%, like, have never gotten a slap on the wrist from the boss. I don't want to tempt that. But I've always promised that I'll be honest with you. In today's world, when you watch us on TV, the idea is talk about the weather. How is it impacting you, right? And we'll get into like this much sciencey. Now, Coffee Talk, we can go deep in the weeds. We've shown skew-teas, etc., etc. I remember when it was Pamela Kister as well, David. But on TV, we really try to just stay on the surface because we're talking to people that really are interested in weather, and we're talking to people that are really not interested in weather. And so I'm curious how that was 30. I mean, I was in TV 20 years ago when Dave was around, but like 30, 40, 50 years ago when Dave started in TV, what was that like? So it'll be very interesting. And David, you bring up Pamela Brady. I have no idea like where she is, but it would be fun to chat with her because I believe she was the first female to do weather in Central Florida TV. Like, what was that like? And how did that happen? Because as I recall, she was not a meteorologist. Maybe she was, but my memory doesn't bring that part up. But like, how did she get to be the big star that she was? Because listen, for those that don't know, Pamela Brady, who did weather for 100 years in Central Florida, Pamela Kister before that, she was overly popular. I mean, she was the bee's knees. People loved her. I'd love to catch up with her. And frankly, I'd love to have Danny too, because if out of those three, like the big three, they all really played in big to me wanting to do weather in TV, because I grew up here in Central Florida. And, for what it's worth, David says Pamela Brady's working with Centricare. Is she? I'd love to find her and get her on Coffee Talk. That would be a very fun conversation as well. You know what? Like, we're having Dave. Why don't we try to get Pamela and Danny? And like those three ran Central Florida weather for like 30 years. Why not try and get them on here, right? I would love that. If anybody knows, I can't say that I can get Danny. I'm friends with Danny on the social media, and I've known Danny many times. I've seen and met Danny many times. So Danny and I know each other. So I'm sure I can ask Danny. Can't promise he'll show up, but I can ask Danny. But it would be really cool to be able to find, if anybody knows Pamela, and I'll try to do the same thing. It'd be fun to get her as well. It'd be fun to get the three of them and chat with them. Brian says, I don't know if there's a meteorologist Hall of Fame or not, but if there is, Dave Marsh definitely deserves to be in there. And if not a Hall of Fame, there needs to be, and Dave Marsh should be an inaugural inductee. Yeah, I think that there is, like on a national level, but you know how these things work. If you don't, you know how these things work. It's just like, the Oscars. You have to rally yourself. That's okay. You know what? We'll get them all on Coffee Talk, and I'll print them up a certificate that says you made a difference in my life. And then they can throw it in the garbage. Karen says, I remember when the top weather woman retired from Boston TV. I can't think of her name at the moment. She shattered the glass ceiling for women meteorologists. And that's what's so cool. Yeah. And I think that was Pamela. You know, Pamela, while I don't recall her being a meteorologist, she showed that. And for me, you know, it's kind of funny because I grew up in a world where my mother was raising my brother and I. You know, my parents were not together, and we lived with our mom more than our dad, and dad did a great job of parenting. Like when we were with dad, you didn't get away with anything. But, you know, our mother fought like heck to raise us. And so I grew up in a world where there was no inequality, at least in the way we were raised, like there was no inequality, men and women. And so to like think backward to a day where there was, and certainly there still is on some levels, and that's just a whole other thing. But like, you know, I grew up and Pamela did the weather, and that was it. And it wasn't that she was just like there because she was pretty. It was because she told a great story, and she did the weather just fine. And so it's just interesting that, you know, how life changes and how I can't imagine that world where, you know, where they had to push through that glass ceiling. But it's still in some cases that way, I guess. I'm so old I remember the guy before Dave Marsh. Don't remember the name though. Jan, that's funny. Who was it? Like, I've got names, right? Like in Central Florida, like you've got the Bird Bullocks of the world. You know, there's names, but I don't know for me, before Dave, Pamela, and Danny, I don't know the makeups of the weather teams going behind and before that, you know? But like, we all know the Dan Satterfields, the Michael Lennox, the Pete Delkises of the world, right? It's just kind of funny. But going back, yeah, who was we'll have to ask Dave. Dave will know, right? I remember Michelle, or I've seen something about Michelle somewhere. Oh, Chris, and there's your dad joke. I remember Noah giving the weather. 40 days of rain, though. The dad jokes, they will never end. So that'll be fun. That'll be fun to chat with Dave. Start thinking about questions to ask him. Yeah. Way back, we didn't think of people on TV as meteorologists. They were just the weatherman, or should I say weather people. Well, but Debbie, back in the day, many of them were not meteorologists. Like, that is something that was actually particularly special to News Channel 2 and Dave Marsh, right? He was a meteorologist. A lot of them were not. The first, when I moved to West Palm, the head weather guy was kind of the last of this breed. He was not a meteorologist. When I worked in West Palm, I was at WPBF. His name was Mike Lyons, and he was on TV there for like 100 years. He's just retired now. He knew a ton about weather, but he got it from on-the-job training, right? And so, for example, he couldn't have meteorologist on his little lower third. He couldn't ever get that AMS seal, which when you see it, you don't really ever, maybe you don't even maybe it's just wallpaper at this point, but like that AMS seal there, that means something. There's certain educational requirements and performance requirements that go along with that. So when you see that next to my name, that there's a reason, there's something to that. You know, when you see Tony, when you see myself, there's something to that. Anyway, you know, so Mike wasn't able to have that seal, and you know, he learned a ton. And the one thing that I loved about Mike, and believe me, like, this is nothing to do with bashing Mike. I love Mike. Mike knew a ton about weather because he had the mind of a 5-year-old. And I don't mean that like the maturity of a 5-year-old, but his curiosity. was wonderful. He knew what he knew. He knew what he didn't know. And if something popped up that he didn't know, he would ask. Right? And so I loved that about Mike, because even though he wasn't a quote-unquote meteorologist, dude knew his stuff. Because every time he didn't know something, he would want to know it. And I think that out of everything that we see here in life, we really should always stay curious. If there's one thing that I hope that we could all learn from us as a group, it's to stay curious, to never just write something off. That's why the Pamela Kisters, the Pamela Bradys of the world were great, because if they didn't know something, they would go learn about it. The Danny Train, you can't tell me Danny didn't know weather. Dude did weather for like 1,000 years. Okay, so he didn't have formal training in college. He got it. He learned it, right? And that's what's so cool about life, right? We have the opportunity, no matter what the state we're in, no matter what the stage we're in. Listen, I was always a space nerd, but in the last 5 years, oh, did my space nerddom fly? Am I an aerospace engineer? No. But can I sit here and have a cool conversation with you about space? Yes. Always stay curious. Always ask the questions. Always try to press yourself to be smarter. Always. Never stop learning. Never stop learning. Never stop. And if you find a science that doesn't make sense, don't write it off. Research it. Maybe it doesn't make sense. Maybe it does. That's what's so cool about life. And I think, if I'm honest, and then I'll get off my soapbox here. If I'm honest, I think being a parent really helps me. Because my youngest, Eric, is about to turn 5. He's got the mind of a 5-year-old. And just like Mike Lyons, Eric's always asking questions. And I don't mean, again, I'm not knocking on Mike, because I really need to get Mike on here. I really do need to get Mike on here, just so that he could blast me on here. But I see Eric always wanting to learn and always wanting to take information in. And it shows me, A, I don't know everything, right? But B, why can't I be like that? Chris Pierce, I always pick on you because you're a vocal son of a gun, but that's okay. Chris is always a putz. But Chris is always asking the questions. And I love how Chris says that he's a jack of all trades but a master of none. I think that there's a certain element of that. I also think that you can become a master and then move on and then move on. Like, that's the way I try to mentally work things. You know? Brian's asking, which of the following list of WESH 2 alumni, how many people do you remember from either watching or working with? Steve Rondinero, I watched and worked with over at 9. Andrea Coudrier, I worked with her at Canine Companions. Bill Schaefer, met him many, many, many times. Adore the man. Dan Billow worked with him. Buddy Pittman, never worked with him, grew up watching him. Met him at the Pat Clark Christmas party and essentially fell in love with him and his wife. Buddy Pittman is genuinely one of the sweetest men I have ever met on the face of the planet. And his wife, one of the sweetest women. Those two, the best of the best. Mark Middleton, met a couple times, grew up watching him and Claire on that anchor desk. Best, period. Greg Fox, work with him every day, have for over a decade. Michelle Meredith, work with her, one of the best, adore her. Dan Satterfield, never met him, follow him on social, grew up watching him. Pat Clark, the first show I did at WESH, Pat Clark walks in. If you don't know, Pat Clark is larger than life. Did sports at 9 for a million years, did sports at WESH for a million years. It took me like 10 years to win Pat Clark over. I've been to Pat's house many, many, many times. I go and help him with which I actually need to text him because I owe him a visit. Love Pat Clark. Pat's one of the funniest, driest sons of guns around, but he's one of the most loyal people you'll ever meet. Dave McDaniel, love him, grew up watching him, get to work with him. Claire Metz, grew up watching her. She is a goddess among goddesses. And the day that Claire Metz retires will be a day that I will cry externally. And we'll have her on Coffee Talk. That's what we're waiting for. I'm going to have Claire Metz on Coffee Talk the day that she retires, and I will be so completely devastated. And I don't just mean that. I mean Claire Metz is a walking, living legend. She's the mayor of Volusia County, and Claire Metz is next level. You know I love you, Chris. Yeah, Claire Metz is the real deal. We need her before she retires, dude. Well, it's going to be... I'll have her on during her retirement celebration, which I think... Read between the lines here, Taylor. Marty, did she announce her retirement? All I'm going to say is there may have been some job postings posted here or there. Okay. So, moving right along. Central Florida's most accurate 7-day forecast. Questions, comments, concerns? Otherwise, I need to go run over to my pops. I got to take him to a doctor's office appointment. Any questions, comments, concerns? All right. I'm doing the noon and 4 newscast today, so you'll see me on TV. Sound good? Listen, be the sunshine in someone else's day. Thank you all for hanging out for Coffee Talk. I will see you all later on. In the meantime, have a great morning. Stay warm. Bye.